Can the big screen do justice to a modern cultural icon? Hello everyone and welcome to RotD Review of the Day, and today I am taking a look at the 2018 movie Slender Man. Now, I should preface this by saying that I love creepypastas. I am familiar with the Slender Man mythos fairly through and through. And I really don't have a dog in this race. It's been something that's been kind of interesting, but I don't seem to have latched onto it nearly as much as some folks that are big fans of this particular story. Regardless, I thought it was interesting, and I was kind of eager to see what they could bring to the big screen in terms of a feature-length motion picture. And what I wound up with was a bit of a misguided mess. I think that, well, you know what? To get into it, let's get into the categories. As always, 4 different categories, each one worth up to 25 points for a total possible score of 100 points. And in this one, we have 4 teenage girls that are interested in summoning Bloody Mary. The Boogeyman. Candyman. Slender Man. They are interested in summoning Slender Man, so they watch a viral video that takes them down a rabbit hole, and then they are plagued by one malfeasance or another, be it kidnapping or potentially murder, who knows, or insanity in some way or another. And if you see him, then you're already his, but then they see him and they're still kind of fighting it, but some of them aren't. And honestly, the plot, if I try to give it a score, I have to think to myself, well, what plot? Honestly, this whole movie seemed like just a series of characters that were interchangeable with one another, doing random things to get random outcomes. And then the credits started rolling. It's hard to give this any more than a 4 out of 25. I honestly just didn't see the point in what was going on, what they were trying to achieve, and any direction that they went down. I think that the biggest sin of this as a horror movie was a lack of a coherent mythos. If you're going to have something like Slender Man, or, you're basically creating a mythos at that point. The creepypasta, as far as a mythos that is fully fleshed out, I would say that it's really not. And if you're going to bring it to the big screen, you need to have that established, even just on the back end. Even if you're not going to bring it into the storyline, you need to have it established as a writer so that all of your writing matches up with the core elements of what makes this mythos and this character interesting, and the rules are set in place, and your characters, whether they know it or not, whether the audience even knows it or not, are following those rules so that you wind up with something coherent and logical and, has a flow to it. So yeah, the biggest sin as a horror movie was lack of coherent mythos. The biggest sin as a movie entirely was a lack of interesting characters. These were 4 teenage girls that were so interchangeable that I really don't know their names, and I don't really care to. It just doesn't matter. It's girl A, girl B, girl C, girl D, and girl B was abducted. Well, okay, now there's 3 and whatever. I think one of the biggest failings as far as the characters go in terms of plot and writing is that the dialogue in particular was absolutely miserable. I'm going to give the actors a little bit of credit for trying to deliver it well and doing a so-so job of it, but what was just the words that they were saying was just cliched and hackneyed and just ultimately not very interesting. It was pretty painful to watch as far as any time they opened their mouths. So 4 out of 25 for the plot. The intent, I gave a big old goose egg, 0, 0, 0, 0. This was trying to be a genuinely scary movie. It wasn't. This was trying to flesh out a cultural icon into a big screen format. It really didn't. It didn't bring anything new to the table. It didn't bring anything substantial to the table as far as that goes at all. whatever it was trying to do, I just feel like it didn't in any way, shape, or form. The one thing that it really did was just bring a movie that I watched for an hour and a half and I'm reviewing now and probably will forget 10 minutes later. That's about it. So I can't give it any points at all for the intent. It just, whatever it set out to do. I mean, the only points that I could really give, which I think this is my line that I'm going to draw as far as intent goes, is it was designed to make money, and I believe it did. But that's not something I'm going to give it points for. That's not what the intent category is for. The acting, I actually gave a 10 out of 25. It wasn't too awful bad. They actually performed fairly well with what they were working with, especially. The fact that the characters were so one-dimensional and were so interchangeable with one another, I don't think was a fault of the acting itself. They actually did a fairly decent job. The sense of care that they had for one another and the sense of frustration that they were having with one another as the falling out started to happen, I actually believed, and it actually was sold somewhat all right. I mean, it wasn't anything stellar, and ultimately there wasn't anything brought to the acting table that elevated itself above the dialogue. But they worked with what they had, and I thought they did an okay job of it. 10 out of 25. Now, the technical, I gave a 16 out of 25. I thought this was actually a fairly technically adept movie. The camera work was pretty good. The effects were also pretty good. I was actually kind of impressed with some of the things that they were able to bring to the screen there. They had some transitions in here that were actually just this side of full out impressive. I really didn't want to take a whole lot of points away on the technical aspect of it. That is not where this movie's failing was, and it honestly made it all the more of a shame. The fact that the technical was so tight and brought a fairly good amount of effects and camera work and creativity to the table, that the plot and the characters really just let it down was just a darn shame, and it just should have been better than it was. As far as how to have saved this movie, well, like I said, I think ultimately what they really needed to do was flesh out a solid mythos, flesh out a real solid set of rules. If they see the Slender Man, then this is what's going to happen in this sequential order according to this chronological timeline. And now we know when we're writing the script, okay, we're dealing with the Lizzie character, so she's at this point, so now this is going to happen, period. As far as fighting the Slender Man or fighting the mythos or just trying to overcome it and survive, that would have its own set of rules. Okay, well, they did this, but this character had this infraction, so they're going to suffer this consequence, period. And it just felt way more loose than that. It just felt way more like throwing things at the characters that were random just so they think, well, we should deliver this scare to the audience, and we need to move forward with this character being gone so that these characters can do things, so why not just throw this from the mythos at it? And it didn't make a whole lot of sense. Even going so far as to say that in the storyline, in the movie itself, the afflictions of the Slender Man can be kidnapping, death, insanity, or other malfeasance. Just like basically going down the list of, well, why not, if you see the Slender Man, it can give you a box of candy, or it can, act as your maid for a week. Why not? It just limit the list, come up with a set of rules, adhere to them. It would be a lot more interesting. It would be a lot more of just a fleshed out mythos, and the movie would have been greatly enhanced as a result. So 30 points out of 100 for Slender Man. Not terribly impressive. I was hoping for a lot more. I didn't get much at all. So that should about do it for today. I thank you for joining me. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. If you like these videos, I encourage you to please click subscribe. And remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.